on Airbnb. So Airbnb was the subject of a number of studies I've been doing for different reasons. First of all, Airbnb is a kind of controversial system if we think about that there are people that support it a lot, saying that Airbnb is allowing people to have a more sustainable tourism, that is going to enjoy the city in a much better way that was compared to what was offered before using hotels, classic hotels. But there are other people saying that Airbnb actually is damaging the cities because it's increasing the number of ghost towns or ghost neighborhoods. That is, neighborhoods having a lot of tourism there, and so that local people cannot enjoy staying there. And also is a kind of unfair competition because they propose nothing new compared to the classic hotels, but in an unregulated way. So it's a kind of unfair competition. So I was quite curious to understand the line between these two opposite views. So I start doing some analysis to shed some light on this. So it started 4 or 5 years ago when I started the first work on Airbnb. So, and this was done in London. So we were crossing Airbnb data with other social media data and user-generated content, such as the census data, Foursquare, OpenStreetMap, to understand which neighborhoods in a city enjoy the presence of Airbnb. So we extracted a number of features, and we discovered that some of them are very important, others are not so important. As an example, centrality and number of attractions, the presence of young people, they are all of them are correlated with the presence of Airbnb. This could be not surprising, it's something that we may expect this, but a little bit more surprising, Airbnb also is linked with the low income places and also places that people are renting. And also something very surprising is that the change of this kind of features over here is not, so the features are not constant over here, but they are changing. So some of them are gaining importance, like the income and the renting places. Others are losing importance, like centrality. So after this first journey into London, we discovered other cities, and we did a similar study in other cities, and we discovered that the same model, the very same model, is valid everywhere, at least in the cities we studied. And it's so strong, the model, that we could develop it starting from one city to predict other cities. Okay, so these two link to to where we are now. So because so far what we've done is to analyze the listings, just the location in the city, so where the listings are geographically, that's it. But something was missing on this analysis, is something about reviews. So in Airbnb, as many other places, people leave reviews, and these reviews is a very good source of information that we analyze. So just to understand what we can find on reviews and why they are so important, I show some examples of reviews. There are fake reviews, just not to disclosure any privacy on our users, so fake users, fake reviews, but just to understand why they are so important. So imagine that there is a user saying, this is a great place to stay in a lower area, so close to the public transport. And imagine there is another user saying, my treehouse was a super comfy and totally unique experience. Or another user saying the host was extremely helpful, she picked up from the bus station, gave us great instructions on how to get to places, where to eat, and places to visit. Or finally, another review saying, great host and great hospitality, Mike is a very kind and is willing to spend time with their guests. So what we can learn from these reviews? What is important to understand? So maybe people write in the reviews what they care the most. So maybe the first user is, if he's talking about the public transport, maybe for him it's very important to be close to it. Otherwise, he would have not written something like this in a review. Maybe for the second user, the comfy house is quite important. And for this reason, she mentioned this in the review. And that For the third user, she writes something about the host, maybe because for her it's important to have a good interaction between her and the host. And the last one, maybe is appreciating a lot spending time with the host, so the social interaction with host. Otherwise, he was not writing this in the reviews. So after this, having this kind of introduction of what we can find, just come back to the question we had. So the question is, Airbnb is a social interaction or is a business one? So fostering, not fostering for social interactions. If we think about the classical way to do research to answer this question, classical ways are kind of to have a qualitative ones. So based on interviews, based on focus groups, which are good, are very great methods. However, for a fast marketer as an Airbnb, maybe they are not the best tool because they require financial effort and also time effort. So cannot be replicated very quickly. And the market like Airbnb is changing, is evolving so quickly over time. So maybe they are not the best tool to be replicated. Also, they are not the best tool to be replicated, not only in time, but only in space in different cities. So for this reason, we propose a different way to answer this question. So we propose the linguistic analysis to quantitatively measure what people care the most in Airbnb market. So we based this research on 3.2 million Airbnb guest reviews that were associated in 176,000 different listings over different years from 2010 until 2019 in different cities. So in Manchester, in London, in Melbourne, New York, San Francisco, Sydney. So you can see there are different cities also spread in 3 different continents. So we propose a mixed method. So this mixed method is a combination of thematic analysis and machine learning. It's composed by 5 different steps. In step 1, we did a thematic analysis where we manually identified the themes occurring in Airbnb reviews. In step 2, we label reviews. So we paid workers to label Airbnb reviews according to the themes that we found. In step 3, we use machine learning, and we use some machine learning tools such as Word2Vec to identify sub-themes on the themes that the people are already identified. Then we build a dictionary. So this dictionary was good to be ad hoc for Airbnb. And then we use this dictionary to do some market analysis. So let's go to step 1 and see how we did the thematic analysis. So we start considering 100 random reviews from the pool of 3 million reviews we had. And from these 100 random reviews, we manually labeled them. So 2 different people from us manually labeled them. As an example, imagine the first review. The room was bright and clean. We could assign this the label property because it talks about the property. From the second review, the area was full of nice restaurants. We associate the label location because it talks about the location. And the third one, she left the room in perfect conditions, maybe professional conduct. And she's a lovely and enjoyable person, personality, because he's talking about the personality of somebody there. And the last one, I enjoyed chatting with her. Could be something about social interaction because he's chatting, so there is social interaction. So we did this with this job with the 100 reviews, and we did this 2 independent people with the idea to develop a coding scheme. So the coding scheme was 2 different people in 100 reviews. And then after we did some labeling, we merged our labels to understand, just not to be subjective, try to be the most objective we could be. So after this phase, we found 5 themes that are property, location, business conduct, personality, social interaction. And so, yeah, we started with the 5 themes we discovered, and we consider another set of 100 reviews. And this time, so it's a different set. So this a set different from what we considered before. And this time we paid workers to label these reviews using the 5 themes, with the idea to understand whether we found 5 valid ones or not. So it's a way to validate them. So reviews, label them, and after they label them, we measure the kappa score. So the kappa score is a kind of agreement score to understand whether the people doing that, they agree in what they label. We pay workers using a platform that is called a Figure 8, so it's similar to Amazon Mechanical Turk, so we pay workers to know that. And after doing this kappa score, we found actually that one of these teams contains a very low kappa score, so we had to merge 2 teams. So we end up having 4 teams, not 5, as a result of this merging. So we validate again with another set of 100 random reviews that was different from the 100 random reviews we used before. And we did the same procedure. So we used again to measure the kappa agreement score. And this time was good enough to stay with these 4 main teams. So once we had this thematic analysis done, we can progress to phase 2. Phase 2 is to use the 4 themes that we found in the thematic analysis to label a bigger set of reviews. We use a set of 1,500 reviews, and people were paid in the same crowdsourcing source that we paid them to label these reviews. And we split the reviews in sentences to facilitate the reviewing them. So we had 4,000 sentences and 23,000 annotations from people labeling them. So after phase 2, after step 2, we had this set of the 1,500 reviews that they are labeled. Now we can use machine learning on this set that has been labeled. And how? First of all, we want to understand which are the keywords associated with each theme. As an example, if we think about property, which are the keywords that are associated with property? So to do so, we proceed as follows. We consider all reviews that have been labeled as a property and all reviews that have been not labeled as a property. And then we measure the trim frequency of one and the trim frequency of the other one for each separated, for each individual word. So after if we call the trim frequency of people that labeled something, a trim frequency people not labeled something, we can define some gain as the ratio between the two. We did some tuning to play with this kind of ratio. You can find the details about this tuning phase on the paper, but just the idea here that we do this tuning to understand what the thresholds guaranteeing the best results and removing noise. And thanks to this phase, we could see from bottom up emerging some words. As an example, room, bright, clean, apartment, cozy, studio, house. They are all words. They are the result to be associated with property just using this machine learning tool. Okay, so this was the starting point of the machine learning. So imagine we have these kind of words. We had now a problem. Since our approach depends on the 1,500 reviews that have been manually labeled, but we have millions of reviews, we didn't want to have a method that is very sensitive to the initial set. In other words, that if we have chosen a different initial set, we could have a completely different set of words. For this reason, we consider all the set of the corpus of 3 million reviews. And for them, we use a machine learning tool that is called word2vec. Word2vec is a kind of transforming words in vectors and a way to have in high dimensionality space, so in our case in 50 dimensions. In our case, for each word that has been mapped in this high dimensional space, we could find the very similar words that have a very close similarity from this word in this vector space in a way to include words that we didn't include before, but they are very, very similar to the one that we chosen. So as an example, flat and cottage could be not included in a first instance of machine learning because they could be not contained in 1,500 reviews, but they are included in this phase because they are very similar to other words that we considered. So thanks to this word2vec, we could enrich the words, the keywords associated with each label. Not only this, we could do something even more, because so far we have 4 themes, only 4 themes. We don't have a higher granularity. But if we cluster this kind of words, because since they are vectors in a high-dimensional space, we could use similarities, so a similarity space to cluster them. We could infer sub-themes on this. So, and we did some hierarchical clustering to find sub-themes on this. So, and after this hierarchical clustering, we found 2 categories, which are the business and the social, the 4 themes, and the 13 sub-themes. So I show now what we found after this machine learning step. I found this big dictionary, which I show you bit by bit. So first, we started the hierarchical clustering was showing up 2 main themes. There are business and social. Then if we go to the second level of the clustering, we have the 4 themes that we initially found, discovered using the thematic analysis that are property, location, professional conduct, and social interaction. Then we discovered other sub-themes that are the result of the clustering. As an example of property has been divided into 3 sub-themes, such as property type, interiors, facilities. Location has been not divided, but professional conduct has been divided in other 4 sub-themes, and social interaction has been divided in 5 sub-themes, like people, personality, sharing, talking, and meals. And for each of those, we have the corresponding words, because we have from the clustering, we know the words. So we have, we can build a kind of dictionary, which, as an example, every time we see the word apartment, we know the apartment belongs to the business level 1, or property level 2, or property type level 3, and etc. The same as an example, if we go over like a family, we can see that the family belongs to social level 1, social interaction level 2, and people level 3. Okay, so after we had this dictionary that has been ad hoc for Airbnb, we use this dictionary for market analysis. So let's see how. So, so after we had this dictionary, we did analysis first to understand how the dichotomy between business and social and be changing over the years. And also we could go in a little bit more in deep and see not only over the years how it's been changing, but also across different market segments and also across different neighborhoods in each city. So all of this kind of analysis could have been possible using a standard interview approach, because it could not scale to replicate in so fine spatial granularity and time granularity. Okay, let's start from the first one, to understand over the years the business versus the social dichotomy. We define a metric that is called the adoption, which adoption says how frequent each category is. And actually, we just not use the frequency, the pure number of frequency, but since our data was skewed, we use the logarithmic frequency that was averaged by using the geometric mean. But beside these details, yeah, the sense about this adoption is how frequent each category is. And we found something like this over years, where here we have the different cities, Great Manchester, London, Melbourne, New York City, San Francisco, and Sydney. And here we have the different colors are the different the sub business teams, and we can see something from this picture. I guide you to read together with me. So we see as an example in Great Manchester that in every year some sub-teams are more frequent than other sub-teams, and the same ones for other cities, as an example New York or any other cities. And the two are property interiors and location. So we see that people, when write reviews, they talk a lot about property interiors and location. So this could be something that is where people care most about them, and this is consistent in every city. Also, we see that the summing up all the sub business teams in each year, they are increasing over time. So in every city, none of them excluded, the business part of Airbnb, the business side of Airbnb is increasing over time. Okay, so this is for the business one. Let's go to analyze the social one and see what we see from the social one. We see something like this. So again, we have the 6 different cities from Great Manchester, London, Melbourne, New York City, San Francisco, and Sydney. And we see, as an example in Great Manchester, that 2 sub-teams are much more frequent than others. And if we go in another city, we see that are the very same ones, which are people and personality. So in every analyzed city, people, when are talk about social things, talk the most about the people, about personality, and they talk much less about the sub-social topics. Something very important also, that the social side of Airbnb is decreasing everywhere, in each city, in each analyzed continent. Okay, so this is the first important point. So it seems that the business side is increasing, the social side is decreasing. Okay, so we can zoom in and try to understand a little bit more. And maybe to understand if this trend is valid everywhere, or there is a different trend for different market segments. So something that is very typical when there is a platform, a new platform, is to talk about the phases of the technology adoption. So people joining the platform very, very early are called the innovators, followed by early adopters. Later on, they arrive the early majority. Then there is the late majority. And then very, very lastly, there are the laggards. So, and it's possible to understand in which phase we are just considering the cumulative trend, so is the of all the users, and doing the derivative of them. So from the derivative, we can understand the slope and which phase we are. So after doing this analysis on Airbnb, we discovered that we are here. So we are right now in every analyzed city around the phase of the early majority. So we have not seen so far in Airbnb late majority. We have not seen the laggards in Airbnb, but we do have seen the innovators, the early adopters, and the early majority in Airbnb. So for these 3 different groups, we could analyze and see their business and social score. So to do so, we define a new metric that is called social score. It's a very easy metric. So just we call the zeta score about the social minus the zeta score of the business. So the zeta score is a kind of standardization on the score. So it's one score minus the other. So the way to interpret this is if the social score is 0, means that this review is neither social nor business. If it's bigger than 0, means that it is a little bit more social than business. If it's smaller than 0, it means that it's more business than social. So this is the way to read this score. And so we associated this social score for innovators, early adopters, and early majority. We found something like this, that is very, very surprising and interesting result, that innovators are much more social than early adopters and the other users, also considering the same, and just consider the same here. So even if we don't go back in the time and consider the very last year of Airbnb, still the innovators, the people that joined for the in the initial stage of Airbnb, they continue to stay social right now. So these are very interesting results, because we see a platform that can be used in different way from different segment of users. Also, cities. We know that the way people use a platform is not the same everywhere. So different neighborhoods may have a different way people use the platform. As an example, we have seen that for the Airbnb penetration, that people use Airbnb much more in the city center and much less in the suburbs. And we have seen from the previous studies that the centrality is not the only factor, but there are other factors. Okay, so what do we want to understand now? If there is any trend between the Airbnb penetration and the social score we defined just the slide before. And we found something like this. So we have in x-axis the Airbnb penetration, so how heavily is used Airbnb in each neighborhood. And in Y1, we have the social score, so how social is that neighborhood averaging all reviews. And we did this for each city. And we discovered that in each city, excluding San Francisco, where we don't have statistical significance, but in all the remaining cities, there is a very negative correlation between them. So underlying that in where Airbnb is very massive used, people are much more business compared to the neighborhoods where Airbnb is, there is less penetration and which are much more social. So again, this kind of study would be impossible to be done using classic interviews, because it would be very difficult to replicate across different geographical areas the same study. So wrapping up what we proposed and what is the contribution. So there is, thanks to this study, we have an ad hoc dictionary. So this dictionary contains 2 main categories, 4 themes and 13 sub-themes. And this dictionary is tailored for Airbnb. So in the same way we used for doing this market analysis, other researchers or other, anybody interested in analyzing Airbnb can use the same dictionary to understand other phenomena of Airbnb. So this dictionary is public available, and there are details on the paper where to download it, or just asking me after the talk, I can give you detail where to download the dictionary. Another important contribution is the market analysis we did. So we found that the business is increasing, the social side instead is decreasing over time, that innovators are the most social users, and the urban hubs, so where Airbnb is more present, they are more business than social. So why we should care about this result? Why is it important to understand the trends that we just visualized one slide before? I think that knowing them is important to understand what people care about this market. So it's important to understand how to improve guest experience and how to improve host experience. So maybe is a kind of having a new recommendation system, recommending users not only about the place they may want, but also the kind of interaction they may want. If they want something that's more social or business oriented, this for both guests and also for hosts, which they may join in the platform for different reasons, and for each reason they have is a different recommendation to them. Also to do some tailored marketing, so to understand Airbnb where it's moving to do some marketing in the right marketing, in the right locations. And also, to me, it's quite important to regulate it. So if we go back about the two sides, is Airbnb overlapping with hotels or is not overlapping with hotels? I think if in the debate, we know a little bit more how people use the platform, we could be more informed how to regulate. So I know I don't work and it's not my field to bring new regulation, but I think this could bring some light in how to regulate the Airbnb platform, and maybe how to regulate it in different neighborhoods, because in different neighborhoods we have seen that the people use the same platform in different ways, so could be different regulation for them. Okay, this is all. So in this slide, you can find some details about the title and about this, where to find this paper, and also some details about previous works we have done on Airbnb platform. So just reach me out in case you want a little bit to read something or to, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. That was amazing, and it was very hard to sort of make it accessible, all the metrics and stuff. So you've done a really good job. Also, the examples really helped to drive the point. So meanwhile, I managed to make the live stream work. So there are people also on the live stream. I just I failed to notice a big red button that was saying go live. So I think that was my mistake. So since the live stream people have the possibility to ask a question on Slido, I would start from them, and then we'll take it from there. So one of the question is, I'm curious, did you do the same analysis on reviews on the more traditional hotels, for example, booking.com, to see the differences? I guess the answer is no. Then let me rephrase the question to say, what if you would have done that, what would you expect to find?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and this to compare the platform with the other platforms, I think is interesting to find a kind of validation that is people that we expect that the business terms being used in other platforms like Booking or Classic Hotels are much, much higher. And we already have this kind of half confirmation, just checking the different reviews in Airbnb when we compare Airbnb shared room with the full properties. So if we think is one side is hotels, another side extreme, so opposite side is when people go in Airbnb to share a room and stay with the host. Middle ground is when people in Airbnb go and they rent all the place. This could be a middle ground between a room and hotel. And on this middle ground, we did compare the results against the shared rooms. And we found that the people use much, much more the business side, the business words. So, yeah. I don't know if...
So there was another question. Thank you, Giovanni. So this shows a change of residential mix and loss of residential housing. Does that show that? So especially if you're looking at the Airbnb penetration, can you actually say it's a loss of residential housing?
So if it's a loss of rented houses?
Residential. Yeah.
Residential. No, it's not a loss of residential houses because Airbnb is so the expansion of Airbnb over time actually shows that in the city neighborhoods the centrality is less important in the last years. So Airbnb is starting as a seed of a city center, and it seems to expand after this seed of city center in suburbs of the city. But what is showing is that in these residential houses, still there is a kind of social aspect on them. So there survives the social aspect on them.
Yeah, the funny thing is that, so you're saying outer neighborhoods, they're not touristic. They do two things. One, they don't have hotels, but they have Airbnb. And on top of that, they have Airbnb, they're social.
Yes, exactly.
So they need to compensate the fact they're not touristic to be with the social experience. So that's a very interesting point to actually the Airbnb people should tap into. Then I think there is a last question on Slido. What would you expect to find between people having many apartments in Airbnb versus those having just one of them? So here is the question always, can you distinguish between people having multiple apartments and people having one? And clearly social is a different type of business.
Yeah, the expectations are actually, to be honest, I remember that we did something like this, but I don't know for which reason we didn't continue on this inquiry. But the expectation strongly suggests that the people having many apartments, of course, they are much more business than people having only one apartment. So yeah.
And there is yet another question that is popping in, which is how did you validate the business versus social experience? So you sort of validated the dictionary, right?
Yes, we did two different ways to validate the dictionary. The first way is what we did. So if we have two different hotels versus Airbnb rooms, middle ground, there is the Airbnb in full houses. So we use the dictionary in full houses where the expectation is that people are more business on them. And just with this expectation, apply the dictionary to see what the results are. And actually, the dictionary is much more business in these houses. So this meets our expectation and makes sense. Another one was more on the side of machine learning. So we use some data, label data, and we use this as a test data. And we apply, so we knew the labels in this test data. We apply the dictionary on them and see from if the dictionary is matching the labels we had and is actually matching. So this is the second way to validate.
Okay, great. So that's another question. So I mean, Slido is proving very active today. Where does information about the social score of innovators, late adopters for Airbnb comes from? So I think you had the formula businessman on social. That's where it's coming from. And then I think, so the question is, how did you aggregate on these kind of types of users?
So we consider, so we measure when for the first time the user was joining a platform, and then we divided the three phases of adoption according to a cumulative curve, that is the cumulative way that people join a platform, and doing the derivate, so to understand which phase they are. And then we fix the time to say, as an example, consider only 2019, because we already discovered that in the past people were more social. So concentrate for 1 year only, as an example, 2019. For this year, let's consider all users that have joined in the past, that still are using the platform today, right now, and other users that are using the platform for the first time right now, and see whether there are differences. And that the plot was showing this kind of difference that people have in the same year. And we did some segmentations in this slide that we showed just 1 year, but we did this year by year, also in the past years, and the trend was always the same. So was that the people from innovators were being more social than others.
Okay, excellent. So there is, I think, a classification on the business and personal. Personal social could describe helpful, for example. So I'm not sure the intent behind the question, but I suspect is to say that there might be some sort of middle grounds where you can't distinguish, right?
Yeah, this is true. This is true. So what we did was just using machine learning to according to the labels. So we didn't choose the words. We didn't choose the keywords to say that that a keyword apartment belongs to room because it makes sense to do so. We just use the bottom-up approach, providing all the labels done from the workers and what came up from the using machine learning. Okay, so yeah, it's true. I agree. Some words could be a middle ground, but if they belong in one label more than the other, to me means that statistically people being labeled reviews on containing that word more more business than social, or the other way around.
Okay, that's another question from a rebel saying, but is there an indication that early adopters are actually changing their mind, so are not any more social?
Yeah, it's a very nice question, and it's something we didn't show in the slide. Actually, the answer is yes. So they adapting to the platform, but very, very slowly. So the early adopters right now are less social than what they were years ago. So despite that, despite they are less social than they were used to be, despite that, still there are most social ones. So there are two kind of effects. One is adapting to the platform, at least we interpret this in this way, that the platform is becoming more business, and they may say, okay, this is a new way to be, but still they are the most social ones.
I see. So basically you're saying that the only way the Airbnb can cultivate the social part is through nostalgia. So it's basically people who are actually nostalgic about the old past days of when they join Airbnb, and the other we need compensation. So if your neighborhood is not good enough, then you need to sell a social experience.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So then there is another question. What relation do you see between Airbnb initial marketing strategy, which is basically, I think, the main motivation of your work, right? The sharing economy manifesto, to the evolving use of the platform of more of a business investment? So what relation do you see between these? So are they contradicting themselves somehow?
Yeah, I
over
think
time as well. So did you plot the contradiction versus time?
I have not done that, but it is very fascinating, the question, because sometimes the platform, they start with an idea, and people join for this idea. No, they join, they have this idea. So yeah, I joined Airbnb because I want this. But soon after, when people maybe realize that there is money, then they may make profit slightly, this idea may be bended, may become a slightly different idea. So yeah, this could be possible. Yeah.
Possibly there are new people joining, right? The nostalgic people, they're still there, that is joining with the sharing economy manifesto. They're waving the manifesto, but the new people are joining to make money. Which is an interesting picture. Okay, so I think we finished with the questions on Slido. Thank you very much, guys, on the live stream, and whoever asked the questions on Slido. No, there is another question. Okay, did you try to check whether data from inside Airbnb is accurate? So I think you're using inside Airbnb data,
yes,
right?
we use.
How do you check for accuracy?
We check for accuracy just randomly. Taking some listings that have been inside Airbnb, and then just checking whether these listings are actually in Airbnb website. So we did this randomly from some listings, and they were there. So yeah, we took this as accurate. Yeah.
So inside Airbnb is doing a great job. So, and here there is another question that is a bit political.
Okay.
Are you ready? Okay, good. So let's see. So it's an opinion question. What's your opinion on how neoliberal individualism increases over time? So the priorities and things that change, right, in society. I'm not sure they changed in the last 10 years, but so the relationship between neoliberalism and Airbnb changing approach. Right? So we sort of established Airbnb, departed a bit from the manifesto. Is there a relationship with the wider society, to say, because society has changed the value system to neoliberalism, or is it too short time span to say that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and to be honest, I don't have a clear mind on that, because I think it depends on the priorities on each city. To me, it's important to be informed where the platform is going, in a way that when we want to we regulate this, when we regulate the platform, we know what we are regulating. So yeah, on this, I leave the regulation part to the experts. But it's important to me that when people regulate the market, know that to regulate that if different neighborhoods behave in a different way, different times they have a different way to behave, and different users have, also have different behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like all totally flat as the newspapers tend to look at dichotomy, Airbnb good or bad. It's a bit more sophisticated than that. Okay, so Giovanni, I think we had a lot of questions on Slido. We have 30 seconds to go. No, actually, it's done. So it's 5 p.m. sharp right now. So the presentation was amazing. I really thank you guys on here on Zoom and on the live stream. It was a really, really good first experience, and we hope to repeat that next week with another great talk. Thank you very much, Giovanni, and thank you everybody for your attention.